Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, I hope you already know how much I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. Okay, so we are moving on with our video series centered around Stefano Magaddino. Instead of doing some long intro, I'm just going to jump into it because there's a lot to go over today, and I don't really want to make this a very long video. I want to try to keep it around 40 minutes, 50 minutes, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So let's go ahead and keep moving forward. I'm going to do a quick recap of everything that we went over in part 1, and then we'll just go ahead and move forward. Okay, so in part 1, we talked about how Stefano Magaddino was born into the Mafia. He has 2 grandfathers, his mom's dad and his dad's dad, and each of them run one of the 3 clans of Sicily. You know, now that I think more about it, it's entirely possible that that's not true. It's entirely possible that his 2 grandfathers are just running crews. Because we talked last week about how the Magaddino clan and the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐎 clan are both based in 𝐂�0⁻𝐃𝐚𝐧𝐵. And that would make the 𝐂𝐴rvo family one clan, the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐎 clan one family, or clan, and the Magaddino family, or clan, the third. And that just doesn't make any sense. I know that there's clans in 𝐂𝐁𝐏𝐃𝐏 at the very least, so there's no way that this is one of the 3 clans of Sicily. So I want to say that more than likely, these guys are just very powerful guys in the Mafia, but I don't think they're high up enough to be the bosses of one of the 3 clans of Sicily. I think they're just like running a crew or a capo or a very important man, but not the boss of one of the 3 clans, because they're located so close together. So I'm thinking they may have been bosses, but not like Joseph Bonanno is one of the bosses of one of the 5 families of New York. But I don't know. I could be completely wrong. They could each be running one of the 3 clans of Sicily. It just doesn't seem correct just because of how close together they are. It just doesn't really make sense. But either way, these are very, very important guys in the Mafia, and Stefano Magaddino being born into this family just means that he's literally born into this Mafia life. He is born to be a gangster. On top of that, his dad's dad is so important that his marriage to his wife formed an entire family and an alliance when he married a Bonanno. 2 generations later, Stefano Magaddino and his cousin Joseph Bonanno are best friends, and they grew up in their clan together. They came over to America. It looks like they came about 3 years apart, but once they both got to America, they were 2 peas in a pod. They were always together, and they kind of just ran stuff together. Now, that same clan, the Magaddino clan, had spent around 20-30 years at war with another clan from their small town, 𝐂�0⁻𝐃𝐚𝐧𝐵, the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐎 clan. The Magaddino and the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐎 clan spent about 20-30 years trading bodies back and forth, and that all culminated after one of the Magaddino leaders, named Bonventre, was killed in a bakery, and his remains were cremated in his own oven in America in the early 1900s. Now, this war, it escalated throughout the years. It went so far past what anybody thought it was going to be with that original murder of Bonventre, and this war would decimate entire family lines. Like, this war did damage. One particular murder, the murder of 2 of Stefano Magaddino's brothers, Giovanni and Pietro, led to dire consequences when Stefano Magaddino's brother, Antonio, ended up killing 2 men that he believed at the time were involved in those 2 brothers' deaths over in Sicily. Turns out he was wrong about one of them and figured out that the 3rd man, the one that actually was responsible for Pietro's death, had fled Italy heading for America. Now, when Stefano hears that this 3rd person, Camillo Caiozzo, is on his way over to America, he is hyped. He is pumped. He wanted blood. Like, he wants that smoke. And this was a perfect opportunity to get that. He's in America. Caiozzo's coming to America. Yay for revenge. One problem, though, 𝐂𝐀𝐏 knows that there is a contract on his head. The group of the 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐿 gangsters, now known as the Good Killers here in America, but at the time they were known as the Bonventre gang, in homage to their fallen brother that had been cremated in his own bakery, they had a battle cry: "We will burn you." And they spent a lot of time saying that about 𝐂𝐀𝐏, and he knew it. Now, because he knew that this entire clan was coming for him, he didn't really leave his apartment once he got to America. He steered clear of these guys. And that made it virtually impossible for any of these guys to get to him. Even after like a year of 𝐂𝐀𝐏 being here in America, they still weren't able to get their hands on him. And this is 5 years after the original murder. The murder took place in 1916. 𝐂𝐀𝐏 died in 1921, so he's just chilling, living his life for 5 years after killing the brother of Stefano Magaddino, and that just cannot slide. The Good Killers caught a break, though, when they found out that 𝐂𝐀𝐏 had a friend here. 𝐂𝐀𝐏 had his best friend, a man named Bartolo Fontana, living here in America, and conveniently enough, he was living in Brooklyn. 𝐂𝐀𝐏 got to America on June 28, 1920, aboard the La Savoie. Now, according to Fontana, a specific number of 6 of the leaders of this gang, of the Good Killers, again, they're going by the Bonventre gang, but we know them now as the Good Killers. These 6 guys who were the leaders of the gang, they go to Fontana and they stick a gun in his stomach and they tell him that he's gonna kill 𝐂𝐀𝐏, or they would do it themselves, but they would also kill him. So now Fontana has been told, you're gonna kill your best friend, or we're gonna kill you and then your best friend. You're gonna do this. You don't have a choice. Now, Fontana, he doesn't want to kill his best friend, but he does it to avoid becoming another victim of the Good Killers because, like, of course he does. Fontana had watched the Good Killers leave a trail of blood from Castellamare del Golfo all the way over to Detroit and then all the way to New York. He knows what happens if they tell you to do something and you don't do it. So what does he do? He invites 𝐂𝐀𝐏 to go duck hunting with him. And 𝐂𝐀𝐏, who is sitting here in America going stir crazy because he's not really leaving his apartment because people are trying to kill him. It's been a year that he's been in America. He's kind of going crazy. So he trusts his best friend to go on a weekend trip and go hunt some ducks. And they head off to a farm. Now, there was also a second reason for this entire trip, according to Fontana. Apparently, right now, 𝐂𝐀𝐏 is swimming in money. 𝐂𝐀𝐏 had a pretty successful business that he started here in America, an embroidery business. And he had recently sold it, leading to him having around $600 or $700. Now, Fontana sees dollar signs and, you know, the mafia, they're still like this to this day. They hear you got a little bit of money and they have a million get-rich-quick schemes. So Fontana goes to 𝐂𝐀𝐏 and he pitches him the idea of taking that money that he just got from that embroidery business and using it to build a new business, a brothel. And don't worry, because Fontana knows exactly how to do this. The owner of this cute little inn in New Jersey had also built a brothel in the nearby area. He could give him advice and walk him through opening and running a brothel. And while they were there, they could get in some duck hunting and just have a little leisurely weekend and get 𝐂𝐀𝐏 out of the apartment. So 𝐂𝐀𝐏 is jumping all over this. This is his best friend. So they head off to New Jersey and they head into the woods to hunt some ducks. And while they were in the woods, this is where Fontana would kill his best friend, Camillo Caiozzo. He lets 2 other members of the Good Killers know that the deed is done. There's some going back and forth to New York and back, but soon enough, 2 members of the Good Killers, Bartolo Fontana and the owner of the inn, go about getting rid of this body. So they get rid of the body, and a few days later, apparently, I don't know if I believe this, but apparently, Stefano Magaddino reaches out to Fontana a few days later, and he tells him that he wants to throw him a celebratory dinner. He wants to celebrate his contribution to the cause. Now, while Fontana is getting ready to go to this dinner and receive this honor, Fontana's friend comes over and he lets him know that this dinner is a ruse, and the plan is actually to whack Fontana and tie up loose ends so they don't have to worry about him anymore. Now, when Fontana hears this, he is pissed. He's pissed that he's put in this situation in the first place. He's pissed that he was forced to kill his best friend. But now, to have the good killers coming for his head as well? Absolutely not. Not going to happen. No. So he decides that he's going to go to the police. He goes into police headquarters. He's blubbering, making a big stink, freaking out, and the police abruptly turn him away and tell him to come back the next day. Now, mind you, this is the same police department that Joe Petrosino built, the Italian squad, the one that had been created by Joe Petrosino, and even though he's not around anymore, having been killed in Palermo in 1909 as the only NYPD officer ever to be killed in the line of duty not on American soil. He's not around anymore. There's no way Petrosino would have let this guy not give full testimony right then and there, but Petrosino's not around anymore. So Fontana is turned away and told to come back the next day. Now, the detective that's running the squad now, Detective Michael Fiaschetti, he already has somebody in custody in the office right now in relation to this murder. So he just really doesn't have time for this ranting and raving lunatic. He has Salvatore 𝐂𝐻𝐿 in custody right now. 𝐂𝐻𝐿 is the owner of the Riverview Inn, the hotel that Fontana and Caiozzo had initially arrived at and began their duck hunt from. Now remember, we're looking at this in 2024, okay? So we already know what happened. But remember, Salvatore 𝐂𝐻𝐿, he's more involved in this than, oh, I just own the inn. He's the reason that they originally went to this location in the first place. This is where they began their duck hunt from, but he's far from innocent. So now Fontana goes wild. He's like, absolutely not. I have people out here to kill me. You cannot turn me away. Absolutely not. So Fiaschetti is like, all right, fine, pull my leg. Ugh, okay. We'll get you a hotel for the night. We'll give you an armed guard so that this big bad band of killers can't do anything to you, and then you can come in tomorrow and give your full testimony. Now, according to Fiaschetti, he went to the hotel and watched over Fontana himself. So he is in this hotel with Fontana, and overnight, Fontana starts going wild. Fontana is having nightmares, and he's now convinced that he's being haunted by the ghost of his best friend that he murdered. And this is the first time that Fontana comes out and admits that he had committed a murder. And not only did he have a nightmare, but his dead best friend is standing at the end of the bed with a shotgun in his hand. He is officially being full-blown haunted right now. And now we're caught up in full, so let's move on. Now, for some weird reason, I see it pretty widely reported that Joseph Bonanno was Stefano Magaddino's nephew. And that's just simply not true. They're cousins. And I only know this so positively because when I did a video about Joseph Bonanno, I actually read his autobiography. Yes, his autobiography, meaning that he wrote it himself. And in that book, he talks about Stefano Magaddino being his cousin. So I don't care what any secondhand bullshit website says. They're cousins. Joseph Bonanno and Stefano Magaddino are cousins. Not nephew and uncle, cousins. So anyway, little known fact, Joseph Bonanno's mom was actually a Bonventre. As if this clan didn't have enough cementing between the Magaddino and the Bonanno marriage, Joseph Bonanno's parents' wedding probably served to cement the Bonventre family and their new little clan that they were forming with the Magaddinos and the Bonannos. Again, I'm telling you, this is like the royal family. It's crazy how we see weddings correlate with alliances. And with Joseph Bonanno's parents' wedding, the Magaddino family would actually inherit the beef of the 𝐕𝐃𝐿𝐼 family. Because remember, the whole Magaddino v. 𝐕𝐃𝐿𝐼 beef is because of a murder all those years ago of a Bonventre, which just so happens to be Joseph Bonanno's mom's maiden name. So in some weird way, Joseph Bonanno's parents are responsible for this war. Now, before we move on, we do have to stop right here and we have to talk about Pietro Magaddino, because he is really at the center of this whole Camillo Caiozzo mess. He is one of the two brothers that was murdered, and Camillo Caiozzo was specifically sought out in relation to Pietro's murder, not the murder of his brother Giovanni, only the murder of Pietro. It looks like the Magaddinos thought that it was the 𝐕𝐃𝐿𝐼 family that was involved in Pietro's death for a really specific reason, because Pietro had married into the 𝐕𝐃𝐿𝐼 family. Yes, you heard that right. Pietro Magaddino married Anna 𝐕𝐃𝐿𝐼 on January 29th, 1912 in Castellammare del Golfo. Now, I'm gonna butcher the shit out of this name, but the marriage was recorded in the Chiesta Cattolica Maria Santissima del Soccorso in 𝐂𝐷𝐀𝐏𝐿. Now, this is exactly the kind of name that I would expect to see on a record. I'll show you guys a snapshot of a record that I found from my own family back in Chinese. The words are really complicated, the church names are really long, the records are obviously in Italian, and that's the kind of words that you would see there. So it makes a lot of sense. These words fit exactly where I would expect to see a name coming out of 𝐂𝐷𝐀𝐏𝐿. So anyways, Pietro married 22-year-old housewife Anna Buccellato, daughter of Giovanni Buccellato and Caterina di Benedetto. Now, later on, Pietro's death is mentioned in that same record on July 20th, 1916 at 32 years old. Less than a week earlier, Giovanni Buccellato died at 28 years old on July 13th, 1916. It looks like Giovanni was probably Anna's brother or cousin because it can't be her father. He's 28 years old, she's 22 years old. They start making babies young over there, but not that young. So definitely a brother or a cousin. And we don't know if that murder or death is related, but we do know those dates are very close together. So it looks like when Pietro was initially killed, everybody immediately pointed the finger at the Buccellato family, obviously. This family is probably the sole signatory to most of the deaths in the Bonanno, the Magaddino, and the Bonventre families for the last 30 years. Of course, everybody obviously immediately assumed it was the Buccellatos that killed them. To top it all off, Pietro is married to one of them? Of course it was a Buccellato. Well, it turns out the two murders that Antonio carried out in retaliation for Pietro and Giovanni's deaths wasn't even the right guys. Turns out Pietro was murdered by another gangster, a man named Camillo Caiozzo. And honestly, I'm so freaking curious. What the hell inspired Pietro's marriage to what this family perceived as the devil? They've been at war for 30 years. They have traded countless bodies back and forth. Like, did they fall in love Romeo and Juliet style? Forbidden love of two star-crossed lovers belonging to two powerful yet warring families? Like, what the hell happened there? Was this wedding an olive branch? Was Pietro's wedding meant to be a peace treaty? And then when he died, or when the first Buccellato died, the peace treaty was broken? I really don't know how Giovanni Buccellato died, but at 28 years old and belonging to the family and the organization that he belonged to, I would assume it was murder. But it looks like they had the wrong people that they assumed did it. And I don't know. I really don't know. Again, this is so frustrating. But I don't know if the two men that Antonio initially killed, if they were related to Giovanni's death, and then Camillo popped out of the woodwork later. I don't know if those two initial bodies that Antonio went after didn't have anything at all to do with it. Did they only do Giovanni and then Camillo did Pietro? I don't know. But it looks like even if they did assume the wrong guys, they definitely assumed the right organization. Camillo Caiozzo did belong to the Buccellato clan. He is just not the initial person that they thought did it, but it was the right clan. Now, a super weird point of contention here, because remember, these records are really hard to come upon because the FBI has never released any files in connection with Stefano Magaddino. So we have no way of confirming any facts either way right now. But a weird thing is that I've only ever seen it written about Pietro's actual death, like he died. That's it, he was killed. But the only thing I've ever seen written about his actual death is just plain old wrong. The only mention that I ever see about Pietro's actual death is that he was killed in an ambush outside of a department store in Brooklyn. That makes absolutely no sense. Pietro was married to Anna Buccellato. They resided together in 𝐂𝐷𝐀𝐏𝐿. Caiozzo fled Italy and headed to America when he knew that the clan in Sicily was after him. So I don't know who was ambushed and killed outside of a department store in Brooklyn, but it damn sure was not Pietro Magaddino. There is zero chance that Pietro was killed in America. Honestly, I kinda doubt that Pietro ever even got the chance to visit America, no less die here. And that's just proof that you can't believe everything you read on the internet. even if it seems like a reputable and trustworthy source like ItalyOnThisDay.com, because there's no way it's true. And that is the only time I've ever seen it reported, and that's how I know it's false, because Antonio Magaddino carried out the retaliatory murders in Castellamare. Camillo Caiozzo fled Castellamare. Pietro and Anna are on record living in Castellamare. How the hell do you get to a murder in front of a department store in Brooklyn? It just doesn't make any sense. So I think that just goes to show you can't believe everything you read on the internet, because if that was true, if he was killed in America, there would have been so much more reading material on it. There is no way that one obscure website says, oh yeah, he was killed here in America, and it doesn't say that anywhere else. No way. I don't believe it. And you know what? As I said, the FBI records have not been released. I'm not an expert. Prove me wrong. Show me a news article that Pietro Magaddino was killed in Brooklyn in 1916. Show me. I bet you won't. So anyways, whatever. I don't know how Pietro died. I don't know how the two men that were wrongly accused and killed were killed. I don't know how anyone died. Why were these guys accidentally identified as the culprits? Or how the information that it was actually Caiozzo came about. I would love to know those facts. I'd love it. And I bet you if we did have the FBI files, the answers to those questions would be in those files. And that would be so amazing to read. I really, really, really want to put a Freedom of Information Act request in for this. But I also feel like Stefano Magaddino is a super famous figure. Other people had to have put Freedom of Information requests in for him and been denied. Like, I'll put one in, but I have a very, very, very low expectation that I'll get it. I'm almost positive I won't. So we just gotta work with what we have. Now, although Fontana was only involved in the murder of Caiozzo, Fontana also informed police that the Good Killers, or the Bonventre gang, were responsible for a string of other murders, spanning the entire East Coast. And he confirmed that there was a minimum of 15 cold cases that police had not yet been able to solve that were linked to this group of the Bonventre gang. As an immigrant that was living in the same neighborhood, he's just telling police stuff everybody in the neighborhood knows, but he knows better than anybody else. He confirmed to the police that the Good Killers that these guys have been hearing rumors about and had been looking for quite a while consisted of the leaders that were involved in sticking a pistol into his belly and telling him he had to kill his best friend. Consisted of Stefano Magaddino, 30 years old, Bartolo or Bartolomeo Di Gregorio, 32 years old, and Vito Bonventre, 46 years old, and those three come from Brooklyn. He also gave the name of 3 other members of the Good Killers that were located in Manhattan, and I'll put the actual addresses up here as well. He informed the police that Giuseppe Lombardi, at 41 years old, Mariano Galante, at 27 years old, and Francesco Puma, at 35 years old, were also involved in the planning of the murder of Caiozzo and helped him dispose of the body. I don't think Galante was involved, but I do know that Lombardi and Puma were. Surprisingly, Joseph Bonanno and Gaspar Milazzo are not named in this confession from Fontana. It was only those 6. And I'm really surprised to hear that, but I'm guessing that those 2 guys either weren't involved in threatening him or he was more scared of those guys than he was of Magaddino. I don't really know. So it comes out later that Fontana did, in fact, have a connection with the gang. He wasn't just some Joe Schmo off the street. He was, shall we say, attached to the Bonventre gang. And that's probably why they decided that they were going to go after him. You're going to tell me that amidst this war that's been going on for like 20, 30 years at this point, you're a member of our gang, and your best friend is a member of the Bucolato gang? Are you freaking kidding me? Like, absolutely not. Immediate deletion. One of my favorite things to say is that I don't fuck with people who fuck with people I don't fuck with. And I take that to heart. I am so freaking serious about that. And the Mafia takes that one step further. Their favorite thing to say is that people who fuck with people that I don't fuck with get fucked with. Not literally, I just made that up. But like, think about the thought behind that. It's like, it's cute and fitting, but I made it up. But that is true. Think about what that means. Bartolo Fontana knows these guys in Castellamare del Golfo. And he's close enough with them in Detroit that when the Castellamare clan decides to move to New York, he comes along with them. So they're pretty freaking close. Like, he may not be in the gang, but he's someone that they know and trust and rely on. By the way, let me say that I think that it makes all the sense in the world that the gang would have ended up in Detroit in the first place. First of all, it is like super common for people, not just from 𝐾𝐻, but from that little grouping of Sicily. Like, I'll show you a little circle of where I'm talking about on the map of Sicily. But it's pretty common for people that come from that little piece of Sicily to end up in Detroit. Like, that's actually a really common thing. I think I've talked on previous videos about how most likely, if your family immigrated from Italy, you probably grew up in a place that was common for people that came from that area to end up. And if you didn't, there's probably a story in your family as to why. I have a whole section of my family chilling in Detroit. They ended up going there after coming to America. They settled in New York very shortly, and then they went to Detroit. And my family's from Genesee, which is right next door to 𝐾𝐻. Most of my family went to Detroit, and then once they were there, some of them broke off. They went to St. Louis. Some of them went to other places, let's just say. But most of my family went to the middle of America, where my grandmother ended up staying in New York, and she was kind of the one that was like left behind and forgotten, which is why a lot of my family I don't really talk to. They don't really know much about me. And that just is what it is. That leads to me not having a great big family, and that sucks, but it is what it is. But a lot of the people that headed to Detroit, they stayed there. And then, as I said, some of them broke off from Detroit and they headed to St. Louis. And I guess the rest of them just stayed around the Northeast, but that was really just because my grandmother had gotten married and she ended up staying in New York. But the group that's left here, you know, the people in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, those are all people that stemmed from my grandmother because my grandmother got married while they were in New York, and the family wanted to go to Detroit to be around people that were from their area of Sicily. And she was like, no, I got married. Like, I met someone I don't want to leave. And then they left her. But yeah, 𝐾𝐻 is really close to Genesee, so it makes sense that a lot of people that were from that area in 𝐾𝐻 would make their way over to Detroit. On top of that, it also makes a lot of sense because Detroit is where we would see another one of the big leaders of the Good Killers, Gaspar Milazzo, plant his permanent roots. Like, we know that Gaspar Milazzo had a long and prosperous career in the mafia. Where did he have it? In Detroit. So it makes sense that he would have either gone to Detroit first and then headed to New York, or he had boys that had already been in place, which led to him permanently landing in Detroit. Either way, it makes sense why this group would have ties to Detroit. Now, Fontana goes and he admits that he has this relationship with the Good Killers gang, even though he had initially just acted like, oh, they were bullies. They found out that I was friends with Caiozzo and they stuck a gun in my belly. Like, no, he has to admit, like, okay, fine. I might more than know these guys. They might know me as more than just like a random Joe Schmo. Fine. I have more involvement than I've led you guys to believe. Fine. Now, the police put together a plan, and this plan is to kind of trap Magaddino. So they tell Fontana to call Magaddino, and he is going to help to take down Magaddino and the rest of the Good Killers, or the Bonventre gang. They tell Fontana to tell Magaddino that he thinks that the cops are onto him and he needs money to get out of town. Now, the first time that I did this video, I'm pretty sure that I had a serious issue with this fact, and I don't really anymore, and I'm gonna tell you why after. Okay, so let me set the scene. The police set up a trap for Magaddino. They tell Fontana to call Magaddino and tell him that he thinks that the police are onto him and he needs to get the fuck out of Dodge. He needs some money to get out of town and start his life over again. Magaddino meets up with Fontana at Grand Central Station, and he gives him $30 and sends him on his way. Now, when I did this episode the first time, I was pissed about this fact. Like, I was like, what the hell, man? How are you going to get an apartment with that? How are you going to start a new life with that? You're going to support yourself until you can get a job. You're going to get a hotel or an apartment, or like, what the hell ever you're going to do. How are you going to do that with $30? How are you going to build your life? How are you going to build a new life? How are you going to support yourself? Are you going to end up in a tent on the side of the road Like, you can't do anything with $30. That's what murdering your best friend gives you? Like, that's what Magaddino is willing to part with? $30? Well, to be fair, I've done a lot more reading on the situation this time around when I'm making this video, and here's why I'm not mad at that $30 anymore. Now that I've looked further into this whole situation, I really kind of believe that Magaddino actually had pretty good intentions here. And honestly, I can't really tell anymore if I even believe that Magaddino was planning to have Fontana killed. I don't think he was. So before we even get into it, obviously we have to address the price discrepancies. Yeah, $30 doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, this is 1921. $30 in 1921 is equal to about $500 nowadays. Still not enough to get your entire life up and running, but more than the $30 that we think about. Also, Magaddino didn't just hand him $30 and send him on his way. Magaddino gave Fontana $30, and he told him to take that, buy a ticket, and go to Buffalo. And he told Fontana that once he got to Buffalo, his life would be set, he'd be okay. And on top of that, he told Fontana, like, hey, we've got like 500 grand sitting in a treasury somewhere. And if you are brought in for this murder, there's more than enough money to cover your legal expenses. We'll get you out of the charges. Calm down. It's not that bad. I know it feels scary, but you're gonna be okay. I've got you. Like, I have your back. I will take care of this. He tells Fontana to take the $30, pay for a train to Buffalo, and that the chief there, aka the head of the mafia family there, who we know is Giuseppe DiCarlo, would ensure that he was well cared for. And that Magaddino had already let him know that Fontana was on his way and coming. So it's not like he was gonna just be showing up and be like, oh, hey, funny story. So, like, he wasn't just a complete piece of shit. Like, he set him up. And honestly now, at this point, I don't really believe Fontana's story at all. Like, oh yeah, he's just some poor little barber minding his business, and the good killers just attack him out of nowhere for no reason and force him to kill his best friend Camillo Caiozzo. No, that's probably not what happened. Like, realistically, probably not what happened. What I would be willing to bet a huge chunk of change on is that this is what really happened. I'm gonna go through my idea of the turn of events that actually happened. You let me know if you think it's way off or if I might be right on the money. So Bartolo Fontana is chilling with the good killers. He's laughing, he's pounding, they got their little gang handshakes, whatever. And he turns around and he laughs that he actually knows the dude that ran away from Castellamare del Golfo. Because the good killers, this is a big topic of discussion. Like, Camillo Caiozzo fled Italy and was on his way to America. They knew that boy was coming. This was the top of the conversation for a long time. Like, these guys were itching to get their hands on them. So what I think happened is that Fontana was like, oh, that guy that fled Italy, yeah, the Camillo Caiozzo, I know him. And when he said that, the good killer's ears perked up. They were like, oh, what? What? You're gonna tell me you know this guy? Are you kidding me? So Camillo Caiozzo gets to New York and they do everything they can to get their hands on him, but he's not really leaving the apartment. He is living a life that he's not really out there. They can't just grab him. A year has gone by that Caiozzo has been in America. They still haven't been able to get their hands on him. And the good killers go to Fontana and they tell him, you need to carry out this hit. Like, you want to be in the good graces of these super powerful men? You want to chop it up? You want to pound with us? You want to act like you're our boy? Time to put up or shut up, bruh. You want to sit here and brag that you know this guy that took part in killing my brother? It's time for you to do something. And they hit the nail on the head. Bartolo Fontana wants to be in the good graces of these guys. He was in Castellamare del Golfo with them. He knows what the Magaddino name means. He went to Detroit with them. He knows what it means to be in the good graces of guys like Gaspar Milazzo and Stefano Magaddino. These are very, very important guys. And he knows that. And he wants to be in their good graces. So he decides that, okay, this is something that he's going to take on. And I don't think that there was no threat involved. I fully believe that they were like, yeah, we'll kill you at this point. Like, you're our boy. You chill with us every day. We hang out outside the barber shop. We come to your place of business. You're our boy. And we find out that you're best friend is this guy that took part in the murder of my brother, that's a member of the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐿𝐄 clan that we've been at war with for God knows how long. Like, yeah, it's time for you to do something or you're gonna catch a bullet. Like, period. We kill 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐿𝐄s. If your friend is a 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐿𝐄, that means you're a 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐿𝐄, and maybe we need to start treating you like one. So in my version of events, Fontana carries out this murder. Now, again, Puma and, like, they helped him get rid of the body. It's not like they just left him up to his own devices and said, do it or else. Like, they were there at the cabin when it happened. They helped him get rid of the body. The good killers have done everything right up until this point. Like, should they have killed somebody? No. But if they're gonna make somebody kill someone, this is the way to do it. Like, they took care of this guy. But this insidious little thought wriggles up into Fontana's head, and he gets it in his head that he's gonna be whacked to tie up loose ends. He's convinced that they're gonna kill him. He freaks out and he makes up this "they forced me" story to stay out of jail. He goes to the police and says, they're gonna kill me. They forced me to kill my best friend. And it did not end up the way that Fontana wanted it to end up. So Magaddino goes and he hands Fontana the $30. He reassures him, like, don't worry, bro. If the cops really are after you, like, I've got your back. I'm gonna take care of it. We got plenty of money to defend you. If it does come to that, we got you. You're not in any danger. You're fine. And as soon as Magaddino hands Fontana the money, a squad of undercover police officers swarmed in and detained Magaddino. That's the end of my theoretical events of what happens, but I don't see it going any other way. Like, honestly, I don't see any possible world in which what Fontana said was true. I just don't see it. So, I don't know. You tell me what you think, but that's the way I can't see it playing out any other way. So as I said, Magaddino has been arrested. He hurls insults at Fontana as he's getting arrested. Like, you're gonna die, you're gonna pay for this. Like, of course he did. He just gave you money, set you up with a life in Buffalo, reassured your crazy ass that he was gonna take care of you, and then he gets arrested. Of course he's hurling insults at this man. Later on, Vito Bonventre and 4 additional gang members would be detained for their participation in this murder. So altogether, police arrested 6 men that were related to the 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐄𝐿𝐄 gang or the Bonventre gang, and they were all men that Fontana had named. As I said before, though, I'm really surprised that Gaspar Milazzo wasn't named. Like, I get that Joseph Bonanno hadn't arrived to America yet, so obviously he wouldn't be named, but I'm really surprised that Gaspar Milazzo wasn't. So, I don't know. I don't think that they arrested every single person that was related to the 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐿𝐄 gang, but I'm guessing these are the guys that Fontana, like, ratted out. I don't know. Maybe they just couldn't justify bringing Gaspar Milazzo in, or maybe Milazzo had paid off someone super important and they, like, got an arrest warrant and that super important person was like, oh, hell no. Like, these are the days of Tammany Hall. They were easy to pay off. It's entirely possible that Gaspar Milazzo just had better connections. Either way, we know that Milazzo was standing beside Magaddino on a regular basis. We also know that Fontana was standing beside Magaddino on a day-to-day basis. So, I don't know. The guys that were brought in are the ones that I listed off, and they're the ones that are making front page news as being related to the Bonventre gang, or as they've been dubbed, the 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐿𝐄𝐿 gang, or this day and age's Murder Inc. Okay, so I don't really want to run you guys ragged with like a super long video, and to be completely honest, I have a lot of Thanksgiving prep to do and not really that much time to do it in. This week has been kind of a nightmare. Like, I have had construction going on in my house, and I've had Thanksgiving Day prep, and I'm really sorry to do this, but I'm gonna have to end this here. I feel like I got no information into this episode, so I'm really sorry, but I do have to end the episode here. Thanks so much for watching, and I really hope you guys enjoyed. Please don't forget to tune in next week for part 3 of Stefano Magaddino. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, follow, do all the things, and I'll see you next week. Bye!